listeners, and welcome to yet another episode of the Nigeria Football Weekly podcast with me, your host, Oloke. Today is episode 24, and as usual, I'll be going through how our Super Eagle players have performed in the top 5 leagues in Europe, as well as all the other divisions that are worth knowing about. So without any further ado, before I get started, please remember to follow us on our social media channels at NFWPOD on Twitter, at Nigeria Football Weekly on Facebook and Instagram. And also, I'll be touching on any Super Eagles related news before I round up with the ones to watch before over the weekend before we get into the international break. So, without wasting any time, in terms of Premier League results over the weekend, it wasn't the best weekend for Nigerian players in the Premier League, with none of our players managing to win a single game. However, there were still a few decent performances here and there. So starting with Alex Iwobi, he had another really good performance for Everton as he started the game and played 75 minutes. And he was a threat throughout the game alongside Demarai Gray, who also got a goal, as Everton drew 2-2 away to Leeds United at Elland Road. So next up for them, today's Monday night, by the way. So next up for them on Tuesday night, they'll be playing in the EFL Cup, also known as the League Cup. Tuesday night away to Huddersfield. And then on Saturday, they'll be playing Brighton away at 3 p.m. So hopefully we'll see Iwobi start a few more of those games. I'd rather he's on the bench for the EFL Cup and then starts against Brighton, but let's see what happens. Moving on to Brentford and Frank Onyeka. Frank Onyeka started again for Brentford and he played 70 minutes in total. And he was impressive yet again in a 0-0 draw against Crystal Palace away. So Brentford have 4 points from their first 2 games of their first ever season in the top flight division of England, as well as their first Premier League season. Next up for them, they've got an EFL Cup match against Forest Green, who are famously known as the most green team in the country in terms of all their recycling and processes. And then they'll be back in league action on Saturday away to Aston Villa at 3 p.m. as well. So we just hope Onyeka will continue to shine and succeed. To be honest, I'll be very surprised if I don't see him in the Nigerian national team list, which should be released at some point this week for our World Cup qualifiers. But moving swiftly on to Watford, Emmanuel Dennis, Ogenekaro Etebo and Troost Ekong all started yet again for Watford, which was good to see. However, they got brought back down to earth by Brighton with a 2-0 beating away from home. Although it was good to see Emmanuel Dennis play on 90 minutes after coming off injured in the first game of the season against Aston Villa. So next up for the Watford contingent, they've got an EFL Cup game on Tuesday night at home to Crystal Palace. And then in the Premier League on Sunday at 2 p.m, they'll be playing Tottenham away. So that'll be a really tough test for them, and hopefully they don't roll over as easily as they did against Brighton away. And then finally, in terms of our Premier League contingent, we've got Kelechi Iheanacho and Wilfred Ndidi. They played earlier today in the 8 p.m. Monday Night Football kickoff against West Ham, and they got absolutely battered, to be honest, 4-1. They were the away team, to be fair, and they were not helped out by Ayoze Perez getting sent off after they were 1-0 down. However, to be honest, Mikel Antonio was just unplayable in this game, and he scored a well-taken brace to become West Ham's all-time Premier League top goal scorer with 49 goals, and Said Berama of Algeria was excellent too, so that was really good to see. Wilfred Ndidi started his game as he always does. However, Kelechi had settled for a place on the bench, and he came on for like the final 8 minutes of this game. So Leicester will be looking to put that behind them as soon as possible. Luckily, their next game is away against Norwich City, who are kind of the whipping boys in the Premier League so far, alongside my dear Arsenal. So hopefully we see Kelechi get some more substantial minutes and Leicester get back to winning ways just ahead of the international break, which will be following these round of fixtures taking place over this coming weekend. So in terms of other Premier League updates, Liverpool beat Burnley 2-0. Jota and Mane scored, and Aston Villa beat Newcastle 2-0. Danny Ings scored one hell of an amazing bicycle kick, and El Ghazi scored a penalty in that game. Man City thrashed Norwich 5-0 with Gabriel Jesus having an all-round excellent performance. Jack Grealish also scored his first goal for Man City, while Laporte does what he does best from corners. Raheem Sterling and Mahrez also rounded off the victory with goals for themselves. Southampton and Man United drew 1-1 on Sunday, with Che Adams scoring a goal which I think was credited harshly to Fred, and Mason Greenwood scored a great goal after a pullback from Paul Pogba. Moving swiftly on to Wolves and Tottenham beat Wolves 1-0 with Nuno Espirito Santo going back to his former team, courtesy of a Dele Alli penalty after he got brought down in the box by Jose Sa. And then to round up the Sunday games, Arsenal were embarrassing as they lost 2-0 at home to Romelu Lukaku and Reece James scoring for European champions Chelsea. So at the moment in the Premier League, we've got 5 teams all on 6 points with 2 wins from 2. They include West Ham, Chelsea, Liverpool, Brighton, and Tottenham. So that's it in terms of Premier League roundups, and hopefully we can see our boys get some W's next week. Moving on to the Championship, and Semi Ajayi's West Bromwich Albion beat Sheffield United 4-0 last week Wednesday night. He did come off the bench for the final 19 minutes of that game. And then on Saturday in the league, they beat Blackburn Rovers 2-1, with Semi Ajayi coming on just before halftime as one of the starting 3 centre-backs got injured. So at the moment, they're top of the league alongside Fulham and Stoke with 10 points after 4 games. And with the injury that has been sustained by the other centre-back, you would expect him to come in to start the Wednesday game in the EFL Cup at home to Arsenal. So West Brom and Arsenal play in the League Cup on Wednesday. And then in the league, they play Peterborough away on Saturday night. So we'll see what happens with Semi Ajayi, and let's see if he gets called up for the national team as well. Moving swiftly on to the Bundesliga, and probably one of my favorite performances from a Nigerian player over the weekend, Taiwo Awoniyi for Union Berlin. So before the weekend, he scored a brace in a 4-0 win on Thursday night in the UEFA Conference League playoffs for his club side Union Berlin away to Coups from the Finnish league. And then on Sunday afternoon, in the Bundesliga, away to Hoffenheim, he scored yet again. He scored the equalizing goal in a 2-2 draw, which means he's now scored 2 goals in his 2 Bundesliga games played so far. And he's also got 4 goals from 3 games this season. So he's already going a long way to justify his price tag as their record signing. So next up for Taiwo Awoniyi, on Thursday, he'll be playing Coups in the second leg, but that tie is pretty much done and dusted as they won 4-0 away. And then on Sunday, at home to Borussia Mönchengladbach. So hopefully he could continue his great run of scoring goals that we've seen so far. And then moving on to Kevin Akpoguma for Hoffenheim, who played against Taiwo Awoniyi's Union Berlin. Interestingly enough, and good to see, Kevin Akpoguma also scored a good header in the game against Union Berlin. He scored when they were 1-0 down, so he leveled the game at 1-1. But of course, it eventually ended 2-2. He's looking in good form ahead of the qualifiers, so I would be very, very surprised if I don't see him in the Super Eagles list that will be released at some point this week. But next up for his team, Hoffenheim, they play Friday night away to Borussia Dortmund, who, to be fair, looked very vulnerable in their last game to Freiburg away. And then moving on to Kingsley Hezebue for Cologne. He started in their game against Bayern Munich away on Sunday night. He actually did get an assist as well as they battled all the way, although they did fall to a Gnabry winner in the last 20 minutes as they lost the tie 3-2. So next up for Cologne, they play Bochum at home. So you like to think that they have a much better chance of winning that game. And hopefully we'll see Kingsley Hezebue start that game as well. And then moving on to Greater Fürth, one of the newly promoted teams to the Bundesliga. They've got Nigerian striker Dixon Abiyama, who I previously spoke about in the last episode. So he started their last Bundesliga game as centre forward, played 81 minutes as they drew 1-1 at home to Arminia Bielefeld. To be fair, they were unlucky not to win the game considering the statistics from the game as they had over 60% possession and 15 shots. But next up for his club side, they're away to Mainz on Saturday in the 2:30 p.m. kickoff. So hopefully we can see Abiyama retain his place and finally score his first Bundesliga goal. So moving on to Serie A. Safe to say it was an absolutely shambolic start to the season for Victor Osimhen. So his club side Napoli beat Venezia 2-0 in their Serie A opener on Sunday. However, he got sent off harshly after 22 minutes for a shove while jostling for a corner with the defender. You could say he will learn from it, hopefully. I think it was a bit harsh, but to an extent, you can't really argue about it, to be fair, because he did push the guy. So he'll be suspended for their next game on Sunday away to Genoa. So this means he's not going to play any games for Napoli until after the international break. I'm praying for some favor for Victor Osimhen because last time he was with Nigeria in October last year, if you remember, he got injured in our 4-4 draw against Sierra Leone. He came off the pitch when we were winning 4-2, and it really disrupted his first season with Napoli. So hopefully There will be no issues for him when he goes to come and represent us for our World Cup qualifiers. And his first game back for Napoli after the break is at home to Juventus. So he certainly does not want to miss that game for any reason. So speaking of his opponents, who they beat 2-0 on Sunday, Venezia, Taiwo Awoniyi, right back for the Super Eagles. He did start the game and played 51 minutes in the 2-0 loss. David Okereke, who recently signed for Venezia, he's still working on his fitness, so he was not in the squad for that particular game. But let's see if he makes an appearance on Friday in their 5:30 p.m. away kickoff to Udinese. And hopefully we can see Awoniyi start that game again. I'm a bit worried because he came off after 51 minutes, so let's see what happens there. And moving on to Ola Aina, another right back for the Super Eagles / left back. Positive news for Ola Aina because he did start the season at left wing back for Torino, so he's firmly in the manager's plans, and he played all 90 minutes. He played in their season opener at home to Atalanta, which they were really unlucky to lose. They lost with the last minute winner, and that one ended 2-1. But next up for them, they've got a chance of redemption on Saturday evening away to Fiorentina. So we wish Ola Aina all the best, and he's looking good so far. Moving on to one of the newly promoted teams, Salernitana. So Simino Anko signed for them last week. That was confirmed as we anticipated. And they've also got Joel Obi in their ranks. So both players started on the bench in their Serie A opener this Sunday as they lost 3-2 away to Bologna. It was their first Serie A game in 22 years. Simi came on for the last 25 minutes and Joel Obi came on for the final 7 minutes. But next up for them, they've got a big game at home to Jose Mourinho's Roma. So they'll be looking to finally get some points on the board, so to speak. And then finally, in terms of Serie A updates, Kingsley Michael for Bologna, who won the game 3-2 against Salernitana. He was an unused sub in that game, and it looks like he will be a backup for the season. So let's see what happens in terms of his own situation. But next up for Bologna, they play away on Saturday to Atalanta. So let's see if Kingsley Michael gets an appearance or if he's likely to just be an unused sub for majority of the games this season. And then moving on to the French League, Moses Simon's Nantes. They were in action on Sunday afternoon, but they lost 1-0 to Rennes. He was subbed off at halftime, so I'm not sure if there was an injury there or if there's any big issues. But they've got a tasty tie coming up next on Friday night at home to Lyon. And then moving on to Teremoffi, Super Eagles striker. He played 62 minutes for his club side Lorient as they were away to Montpellier on Sunday. They lost the game 3-1, unfortunately, and he did not score any goals. But next up for him, on Sunday, they'll be playing Lens away. So Lens will be one of the better starters in the league season so far. So that'll be a very, very tough game. But we need Muffy to be running up the scores. I think he's only got 1 goal at the moment for the season. But moving on to Bordeaux, Samuel Kalu, after collapsing in the game against Marseille in the previous week, it was good to see him come on for the last 9 minutes on Sunday in Bordeaux's home game to Angers. They did draw the game 1-1, but when you think about how much more important his health is, it was just good to see him back on the pitch. And clearly he's passed all the tests he needed to pass to be able to be on the pitch. But next up for his club side, they're away against Nice on Saturday. So that's going to be a tough game because Nice have been one of the better starters in Ligue 1 this season. Just to refresh anybody's mind, Nice currently have the manager, Gaultier, who was Lille's manager when they won Ligue 1 last season. So that's it in terms of Ligue 1. And in terms of final roundups from the top 5 leagues in La Liga, Samuel Chukwueze is still recovering from injury as Villarreal drew 0-0 for their second consecutive La Liga game, this time away to Espanyol. And next up for them, they're playing on Sunday away to Atletico Madrid. So let's see if he recovers for that game to be able to take part. But I don't know the status of his injury right now, to be honest, guys. And then just in terms of roundups from the Spanish second division, Omar Sadiq's Almeria beat Real Oviedo 2-1 on Friday at home. No goals scored for Omar Sadiq this time around, but he goes again next on Sunday away to Amorebieta. So hopefully he can get himself back on the score sheet. Kelechi Iheanacho played 62 minutes on Sunday in a 2-0 win for Huesca against Cartagena. And next up for them on Friday, they'll be away to Las Palmas. Kenneth Romero, Super Eagles centre-back. His club side Leganes drew 0-0 at home to Burgos CF earlier today on Monday. despite playing against 10 men for over 70 minutes. I actually had a bet on the 5-game accumulator run, and all my other results came in apart from Leganes, who drew 0-0 at home to a team they should have been beaten in all honesty. So safe to say they're not in my good books. But next up for them, they play UD Ibiza over the weekend, and hopefully they'll be able to get back into winning ways. So that's it in terms of the top 5 leagues. So moving swiftly on to all the other leagues in Europe, excluding the top 5, starting with the Premiership in Portugal. Zedu Sanusi on for Porto. In their last game, he actually was not in the squad, so that's one to watch out for. So Porto drew 1-1 against Maritimo away, and Zedu Sanusi was nowhere to be found in terms of the squad. It's also a bit concerning because they did sign a left-back, Wendell from Bayer Leverkusen, so I don't know what that means in terms of his place in the actual squad going forward. But yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one in terms of confidence from the manager, especially because they signed him off the back of him making an error in one of their league games recently. So let's see what happens to Zedu Sanusi in the coming weeks. But next up for Porto, they play on Saturday at home against Arouca, one of the newly promoted teams. Chidera Ejuke's Boavista, they won their second game in a row in a 2-0 win at home versus Santa Clara. Awoniyi kept the clean sheet and also got an assist in that game, so it's looking quite good and promising for Awoniyi. We know he's really good for the morale of Super Eagles, so I expect him to be in the squad no matter what. But next up for his club side, Boavista, they're playing Vizela away on Saturday. That's one of the newly promoted teams as well, so we wish Awoniyi all the best in that fixture. And then moving on to the Dutch Eredivisie, Super Eagles number 1, Marco Okoye's side, Sparta Rotterdam, drew 1-1 at home on Saturday, at home to Heracles, with Marco actually being generally impressive, and he made 3 saves, although it's unfortunate he couldn't keep the clean sheet. But next up for them, they're in action against newly promoted Go Ahead Eagles away on Saturday, so hopefully Marco can get his first clean sheet of the season. And then moving on to the Jupiter League, which is the Belgian league, Polonwachu and Genk had no games to play over this past weekend because their potential opponents, Royal Antwerp, had to play Europa League game qualifiers. So next up for them this weekend, they'll be playing Anderlecht at home on Sunday. So hopefully we can see Onuachu continue his rich goal-scoring form. And then speaking of their potential opponents in the league, Royal Antwerp, they've got Nigerian midfielder Al-Hassan Yusuf. He started yet again on Thursday night in their 4-2 loss to Omonia in the Europa League qualifiers. Yusuf played all 90 minutes, which is good to see, and he's been ever-present ever since he's moved to their team. So the next game for him would be the return leg on Thursday at home. So let's see if they'll be able to turn around that deficit. Remember now, there's no away goals in terms of UEFA competitions. So if they could somehow pull that 2 goals back, then it'll be looking good for them. And then in the Belgian League on Sunday, they'll be playing Leuven, who are one of the teams Genk have already played this season and thrashed 4-0. Moving on to the Scottish Premiership, Leon Balogun, Joe Aribo, and Leon Bassi of Rangers. They were also involved in a Europa League playoff tie against Alashkert Martuni, and they won the first leg 1-0 with Joe Aribo and Calvin Bassi starting the game. Leon Balogun was on the bench for that particular game. But on Sunday, they played Ross County away and beat them 4-2, with all 3 of those Nigerian players starting the game, including Leon Balogun. Aribo actually scored a really, really good goal with his left foot in that game as well. So I'll urge anyone to check that out if you can. So next up for Rangers, they've got their away leg of their Europa League qualifier with their 1-0 lead. So hopefully they'll be able to hold firm on that one. And then on Sunday, it's the big one as they play the first Old Firm game of the season at home to Celtic. So if you know, everybody knows how big Rangers versus Celtic is as a rivalry. So I'm sure they will not want to lose that one for any reason. And you have to consider them big favourites considering that they're champions and they beat Celtic every time last season. So we wish them all the best in that fixture. And then moving on to the Turkish League, Super Eagles captain Ahmed Musa, his club side Fatih Karagümrük drew 0-0 on Saturday away to Rizespor. And next up this Saturday, they've got a tricky tie away to Besiktas, who are the champions of Turkey. So that should be an interesting one and a good test for Ahmed Musa as well. And then speaking of big clubs in Turkey, Osay Samuel plays for Fenerbahce, and he played 60 minutes in the Europa League playoff on Thursday in a 1-0 win against HJK Helsinki at home. And then on Sunday, he played another 60 minutes in a home win against Antalyaspor, which they won 2-0. So next up for Fenerbahce, they played a return leg on Thursday. And then on Sunday, they play an away league game against a club side called Altay. So we wish him all the best in that one. I don't know if he's on the radar of Super Eagles, but we'll see what happens with the list that'll be announced soon. Speaking of someone who's done his chances of getting back into the national team no harm, Chidera Ejuke and CSKA Moscow. So he was involved in a 2-0 win on Saturday at home to Akhmat Grozny in the Russian league, and Ejuke scored his second goal of the season to go with 1 or 2 assists already this season in 3 games. So he's been very, very impressive to start the season, and hopefully that'll lead to a recall back into the national team for him. Before the international break, he's got another tie on Thursday evening away against Giants of the Russian League, St. Petersburg. So let's see if he's able to notch up another goal and force his way back into the squad for the Super Eagles. Peter Alainka at Slavia Prague, unfortunately, is still injured. So we'll monitor his progress and see how quickly he could come back to fitness. Because I think he's one who, with the way he was playing towards the end of last season, he's definitely knocking on the Super Eagles. I know he played in our friendlies against Cameroon, but when it comes to serious business like World Cup qualifiers, that's when you know who's really trusted by the manager in terms of getting selected. And then moving on to the Greek League, Henry Onyekuru and Olympiakos. He was a 74th minute substitute in the 3-0 win on Thursday at home to Slovan Bratislava in the Europa League qualifier. You can see the trend here with all of our players falling out of the Champions League qualifiers. I think at this rate, we might only have Chukwueze in the Champions League proper, as well as Innocent Bonke, who plays for Malmo. If Malmo win their tie, as they're currently involved in the final round of qualifiers. But Onyekuru's team won 3-0, which was a nice win for the Europa League qualifiers. And the next game is the away match on Thursday in the second leg. And then their league will start after the international break. So there's been no fixtures for them in terms of league games so far. And then in terms of leagues, finally, in the Cypriot League, Abdullahi Shehu and Iyai Atiemwen Believe play for Omonia Nicosia, who are the champions of Cyprus. They won their Europa League playoff tie 4-2 against Al-Hassan Yusuf's Royal Antwerp, which I mentioned earlier. Abdullahi Shehu did start at right back, and Iyai Believe Atiemwen came on in the 73rd minute to score a penalty in this match. And their next game is the return leg this Thursday, so they've had no league games because their league is going to start in September as well after the international break. So that's it in terms of our roundup of our players all over Europe. In terms of our Starboy Eagle of the Week, it can only be Taiwo Awoniyi, although huge shout out to Aribo, who scored. But I think for this week, it definitely has to go to Taiwo and Ejuke as well. Ejuke also gets a shout out, but Starboy Eagle of the Week has to be Taiwo Awoniyi for Union Berlin. 4 goals in 3 games so far, 2 goals in 2 Bundesliga games so far, and just showing grit and tenacity, and also dealing with the pressure of being Union Berlin's all-time record signing. He's just going from strength to strength, and I'll be very surprised if, not that I'll be surprised, but I'm hoping to see him called up for the national team. I know we've got Osimhen, Iheanacho, and Onuachu as our 3, but I would be very surprised if he's not called up as well, considering his form so far. So let's see how that goes for Taiwo Awoniyi, and congratulations to him for an awesome weekend performance-wise. Speaking of Super Eagles news, if you listen to the last podcast, you know I did a AFCON draw review. But for the sake of anyone who didn't listen to that podcast, the Super Eagles have been drawn into Group D for the Africa Cup of Nations taking place in January, alongside Egypt, Sudan, and Guinea-Bissau. Please check out the previous podcast out on all streaming platforms and YouTube to get a more detailed update on the draw and to learn more about opponents, including our head-to-head record against them, their star players to watch out for, and how they actually qualified for AFCON as well. As I mentioned earlier, I anticipate the squad announcement for our World Cup qualifiers against Liberia and Cape Verde, which will be taking place at the start of September, to be announced probably tomorrow on Tuesday, or it may come on Wednesday, but I'm sure it's imminent, definitely imminent. So we'll use the next podcast to break down the squad list and our expectations following the final round of games over this week before the international break. So next week we'll do the review, and then we'll touch on our preview for our Nigeria World Cup qualifier games, because Nigerian World Cups, we don't play when it comes to qualifying. So just to round up the podcast in terms of the ones to watch over this weekend, Alex Iwobi's Everton are away to Brighton on Saturday, so we hope to see him start again, especially with the World Cup qualifiers coming up. It's good to see him get in form and minutes under his legs. He looks like he has the trust of Rafa Benitez, so let's see how that goes for him. Obviously, Taiwo Awoniyi, Starboy Eagle of the Week. He's next up on Sunday at home to Borussia Mönchengladbach, so hopefully he can make it 3-4-3. Kevin Akpoguma, after scoring and generally being pretty impressive for Hoffenheim, his club side Hoffenheim are in action against Dortmund on Friday away, so that'll be a tough tie coming up against Erling Haaland and co. Simeone for Salernitana and Joel Obi. On Sunday night, they play Jose Mourinho's Roma, so that'll be a tasty fixture. Moses Simon, Nantes, they're at home on Friday against Lyon, who got pegged back from a 3-1 lead to draw 3-3 against Clermont in the French league. So it'll be good to see Moses Simon have yet another impressive performance. And then finally, Aribo and Leon Balogun and co are in action in the Old Firm derby against Celtic on Sunday at 11 a.m. So that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks for sticking with me. Please remember to subscribe and please spread the word. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review as well. Our social media channels are at NFWPOD on Twitter, at Nigeria Football Weekly on Instagram and Facebook, or you could even email us at nigeriafootballweekly@gmail.com. I appreciate every single listener, and thank you for listening to yet another episode of the Nigeria Football Weekly podcast. Enjoy the rest of the games over the week and the weekend, and see you next week. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, share, subscribe, and click the bell to get a notification whenever we drop a video. You can also find our social media channels listed below.